Hello everybody, welcome back to From Depths. Today in the Shipyard, which is what I'm going to name this series going forward, we'll be going over the next designs, which will be a mix between the last reserve fleet one, because I apparently missed one, and then some other unrecognized designs before we get onto the main garrison fleet. Let's go into it. Alright, first up is the last of the reserve fleet section, which is the reserve fleet section is just the fleet that was made after the outdated reserve section and is now also considered out of date but still usable in combat situations. Here we have the early cruiser. It is kind of a mix between a heavy and a light cruiser. It does not carry any torpedoes like most would, but that's because there just wasn't any room, so it's a gun cruiser. It hosts two heavy, rapid 300mm cannons on the front, with multiple casemates surrounding them and having casemates all down the craft, as it was taking how would you put this? It was taking inspiration from the old ironclads, because this was be like the first batch of cruisers after the ironclads were phased out. For another armament, for a secondary, it has a twin 150, same one from the modernized ironclad on the very back. This is just in a position to cover the back from smaller threats. The idea being it would be a frontline, frontal face the enemy kind of ship. And then you have a back secondary battery to engage smaller ships that try to zoom around you. Again, casemates going all down them. They're all the 130s. And then 4 of these twin 40mm emplacements that are on both the CWIS and a engagement AI, meaning they will both engage missiles and ships. For vision, we have 2 detection towers. Both rotate, as I will show off here. Both rotate. One is facing backwards, one is facing forward. They both have rangefinders on them to provide very accurate fire. And I will give you a side broadside to show off the firepower. Okay, going down to the design, we have the bridge, which is just decorative more than anything on this one, as most of the primary AI is we buried and the vision is based on the 2 towers. Going from the front here, we'll go off the start. So, as stated, we have the bridge. All it hosts is the PIDs. Then we go beyond the bridge to this section underneath the detection tower, to a armored brick that contains the material containers, 2 of them, giving this thing a whopping 20,000 in reserve materials. Going down the line, we go into the funnels. The funnels are strictly decorative. Nothing is inside them, as I learned from my previous designs, not to just put the engine in the funnel, because then they'll just shoot the funnel. And that is it for the deck. Let's work our way down the ship. On to the first layer of bulkheads, we have a crossbar that goes all along the interior of the ship. Ooh, that's a mistake I missed. I'll fix that afterward. A crossbar that goes all along the interior of the ship, all the way to the back. This provides some extra structural rigidity, so it won't fall apart. As we go down, we get to the cannon, the first one, the 4 cannon, and then if we go just behind it, we have the aft cannon, which is a little bit raised up. More complex than I normally make them, as these are rapid fire ones. I try to make them fire as fast as possible without taking up too much space. They have a autoloader limit of 12.8, and they're 300mm, so they do pretty decent damage upon a hit. Again, just simple APHE though, because I didn't want to lower it. Going on, we have the ammunition and the fuel, which is in these armored boxes. And they are also raised above the water surface, so it's unlikely that they will get hit by torpedoes, but they are armored up just in case, so it doesn't damage the rest of the ship. Going on down the ship, we just have more bulkheads until we get to the rear gun, which, as you can see, is just the same design as the one on the other one. No differences in between them. And then we finally have the last bulkhead on the back before we go down and see there's a whole another layer of bulkheads along with the interior engine. It had to be quite beefy to keep this thing stable and also able to perform. It has some massive radiators on it to make sure I don't have to vent it so there's no weak points. Other than that, though, the rest is just bulkheads to protect the ship against sinking. Max speed is, if I can just get her going, because I haven't tested out this one's speed as much as I had its buoyancy. I was messing with its buoyancy for a long time. At the moment, it's going about 14 to 15, albeit I don't think it's going in a straight line yet. I don't know why it's deciding it needs to drift there. It does have a rudder, so it is able to hard turn if it needs to, but it's just deciding not to. It has a max speed of, it seems, maybe 16 or 17 meters a second, so it's mildly faster. I think what's slowing it down is probably the fact that the front is much lighter than the back, for some reason. I'll have to look into that more later. Other than that, though, that is the Reserve Fleet Light Cruiser. And that is the very last of the Reserve Fleet stuff. So we will be going on to the next section, which is Garrison Fleet and the in-between stuff. The in-between stuff is going to be stuff that wasn't categorized, and you can kind of put it where you'd like in there, and it'll still kind of fit in most areas, or if it doesn't fit in most areas, it will fit in some other areas. Alright, let's move on to the next design. Now, I know this series is called In the Shipyards, but I wanted to point out specifically the kind of aircraft that the ships in question will be dealing with, if you're wondering what kind of planes would be even engaging this, as I'm just using my own designs against each other, as you see in outros. In this case, it's a biplane. Not much fancy about it. It flies fast enough. I'll be going over the aircraft as a whole in their own separate video, but I wanted to show you the kind of planes they'd be fighting so you understand the AA not being that good on most of these craft. Anyways, back to the next ship design. Okay, here we have the Early Destroyer. I based it off of, I think it was a Japanese destroyer design, but I just compacted it way down. It has a single 94mm cannon on the front as a defensive gun, firing APHE. Has a tower that has a detector that'll rotate as it's in motion. And then it has 3 twin torpedo launchers, all down the hull. And then a single 20mm AA gun on the back, both for shooting at planes and other ships, mainly planes. It was kind of added on there as just an extra bit. And then it has its funnel, which also houses its exhaust, as the engine is right behind the main, behind the bridge. The bridge contains both the AI transmitter, and the AI is just underneath it. It's not a very good design, frankly. If it gets hit even once, it will die. But the whole premise was Early Destroyer. Engine's not very big. I think it's just like a 3-cylinder. Yeah, I believe it's just a 3-cylinder that has 3 injectors, and that's it. Other than that, though, let's have this thing go so we can get its max speed real quick. From my testing, the stability on it does leave something to be desired. It likes to wiggle a lot. I don't know if it's just how I've built it, or this is what it starts doing, and I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know if it's that I have too much roll or not enough roll, or if it's just because it's so thin. I don't know. If you happen to know, do let me know in the comments. I would like to figure out why this thing loves to wiggle so much, because I really like how this design turned out, but I can't use it when it's wiggles that badly. The top speed ain't that speedy in comparison to some of the capital ships, despite it being much smaller, but that's just because it's running on 6 small propellers, pushing a design this long. It still goes a respectable 12 to 13 meters a second, and its weapons are solid. It does about 13, nearly 14,000 HE damage per torpedo. And I have it on stagger mount, so when it fires, it'll fire them all out, so then when one hits, it won't interrupt the explosion. So the explosion won't knock away any of the other ones, so then all can hit. It is on a circling AI, so when it sees a target, it'll circle around the edge of the target and fire torpedoes through it. The whole idea being using old school torpedo boat tactics, where you just bolt in, circle the target, firing torpedoes into the side of it as you continue circling. Haven't combat tested it just like the rest. Haven't really been combat tested that heavily, but I do know that the torpedoes on this are fairly effective from what minimal testing I did. That's the torpedoes exploding out there. Other than that, though, let's move on to the next one. Okay, on to the more modern designs. This is part of the cargo fleet, which isn't quite garrison fleet, but it gets close to that point. This is the cargo ship I've designed. It houses one 40mm twin rapid-fire anti-air gun, two of the 94 mils on the front, and two of them on the back, along with a third on the very rear. That is all the weaponry that this thing encompasses, as this is just primarily a freighter. It holds an absurd amount of 317,000 materials on board, so it can transport a lot of material. The AI both has a gimbal tracker in the bridge, but also the AI itself is stored just underneath the bridge. Most of the ship is under the water, which is also why it mainly has a bunch of light alloy all along the bottom. But unlike the ironclad design, when it's, oh, nothing can hit into the water, it's more along the lines of I was trying to keep this thing light enough to float, but have it have an armored deck. So then I can have a large amount of armor on the top deck to protect stuff, and also have all these bricks, which are storage crates, but they're just painted metal that has storage crates inside them. That does mean if we take shells, it is vulnerable to detonate on the deck, but the whole point of this thing is to never have to bother engaging. Past the outer layer, though, is the other reason why this is all light alloy, and that is there's a thick layer of heavy armor on every side of the ship. Wherever there is a bulkhead that could be potentially vulnerable, there is heavy armor. This will help it against any shelling, and there's also 8 repair bots that'll also repair any minor damage to the ship, because I planned for these to operate independently. To drive this massive thing, I had to make a pretty decently complex engine. I believe it's a 12-cylinder? Yeah, 12-cylinder engine with a bunch of radiators and additional radiators all over the place, because I also injected the hell out of them to make sure this thing could stay afloat. Its actual travel outlook always has the bridge slightly underwater. I don't know why it does that, but at the same time, it doesn't really cause that much drag on a ship that's already massive, so I'm just not worried about it. It's driven by these 2 propellers, and then has its rollers, turners, and pitch propellers. It has a decent speed of 12 meters a second. It's able to keep pace with most capital ships despite its massive size. So if you need resources along with your fleet, it's fine to bring it along. I wouldn't recommend taking it into any sort of battle, though. The only reason it even has guns on it is to protect it from air attacks. The twin 40 mils are specifically designed to shoot at aircraft. As you can see there, it's specifically designed to shoot at aircraft. It's decent fire rate overall. It's good enough against most light aircraft that try to intercept it. I haven't used it in a campaign, but this one I do plan to use in a campaign, as I think it'll come in very handy at the end of a campaign, or like mid-campaign when I have a lot more resources to work with. Other than that, though, that was the CF Armed Freighter. The next design was a for fun design. This one will not be used in any campaigns, as it's way too expensive, way too ugly, and way too big for what it's supposed to be. So this one is kind of just a ornament more than anything. It houses 4 of these triple-barreled 300mm short-barreled cannons. They have a much slower fire rate than the twin-barreled ones, but that's because they're triple-barreled advanced cannons, and they are kind of complex. It houses 3 of them, 2 on the front, 4 of them, and 2 on the back. Kind of in an Italian mount. It houses 6 large torpedoes on either side on swivel mounts. So these can rotate to either side, and they're in hatches, so they'll open before they fire torpedoes. They are very scary when they hit stuff, but that's because this whole design is just ridiculous. It has a large AA array of twin octuple mount quad artillery, octuple 40 mils, and then 10 of these twin 40s, along with 3 more of the octuple ones on the back of the bridge. The bridge itself is, again, just a decorative piece. Behind it is the detector tower that, again, rotates to targets when engaged. It has 2 of the 90-degree cameras, and then it has a coincidence rangefinder on the inside of it, protected by a large cape of iron or metal plate, whatever you would like to call it. It is all in a turret that goes all the way down into the hull, so it's nice and embedded. Going down through the design, we have these single AA mounts that are 60 mils. They fire at a decent rate. Just test fire it for you all here. And then you can see the torpedoes going. They're not the fastest torpedoes, but they're devastating when they hit. It has 3 of the 60mm AA cannons on either side. They all have this laser targeter that'll allow them to have time-detonated rounds on targets. It has 3 smokestacks that are just decorative. That's it. Along with much decorative armor all over the deck, just to try to fill it out, as I was doing a lot of trying to decorate this thing because it was so big. In fact, this thing could be shrunk by like 3 layers and it would still look massive. Anyways, going down into it, we have, just underneath the bridge, we have the AI center that is massively powered, and it has great EMP protection in the form of a bunch of shock absorbers. Just behind that, we have the twin engines, which like to overheat constantly. They are, it's a lot. Too much, in fact, 78,000 engine power. But at that point, I didn't really know what I was doing. Just wanted to make sure this thing could float. In the bottom, it also has a giant panel of repair bots, meaning this thing is hard to kill. Along with just giant empty bulkheads, because I had no idea what I was doing when I built this. And not only does it have that back repair bot one, it also has one at the front, nearby the quad rapid-fire 60mm cannons. On the front, there's a thick armor brick that surrounds all the ammunition and fuel that is needed to keep this thing floating. And then there's an armored ring around each one of the turret barbettes, along with a whole nother layer of bulkheads in the bottom. This thing is massive and will never come to being used, but I felt like it needed to go here since originally this would have been my heavy cruiser, and this is in no way a heavy cruiser. But let us move on to the last design. This is the last design of this episode. This is the last-ditch light cruiser. The whole idea behind this one being they tried to make it as cheap as possible, but still effective enough to engage surface targets. It has 3 of these 150mm dual turrets. The same one from that destroyer and from the back of that early cruiser. They service well enough, so I figured that works. And it's a smaller caliber, so it'd be much easier to procure and manufacture. It has 2 50 caliber machine guns for all of its AA defenses, because that is the state they're at, and they are both only on CIWS mounts, meaning they will only shoot at missiles, and that is it. The bridge hosts the visual camera, and then just beneath the bridge is the AI with a bunch of AI bits and some PIDs. In the engines, there is nothing in the smokestack. Nothing in the smokestacks whatsoever, as again, trying to protect the engine. The engine itself is buried in a big old brick of heavy armor I believe it is a 6-cylinder engine, fuel engine. Behind that, we just have some coal for the material storages. The whole idea behind this design is they used as much wood as possible and then just used armor to armor up any sections where they thought needed it and nowhere else. It only has one layer of bulkheads. I didn't go with a multi-bulkhead design on this, as I was just trying to make it as cheap while being as effective as possible. It has a material storage of 11,000. And it has a max speed of... One moment. If I remember correctly, this thing was decently fast due to it just being made out of wood. 15, 16, maybe up to 17 meters a second, if I remember correctly. It's decently speedy. The main thing it's ever fighting is that it's too buoyant because it's all wood. However, as you can see by the deck, it is fairly stable. It just likes to lean forward for some reason. I think it's mainly because of the bridge and the fact that there's an armored plate on the front. Most of this design is just made out of wood, though, and that's it. I was keeping it as wooden as I could to show just how desperate at that point they would be. Like I said, decently fast, decently armed. I've tested it against several of my other ship designs. It performs as a last-ditch ship would, otherwise known as not very well, but well enough for its cost. The ship itself costs 64,000 materials, which for a ship of this size with 3 cannons ain't terrible. But it's not a great design. It really embodies that last-ditch thought process. Vehicles I've tested it against that it's lost is against most of the Battlefleet designs, and the freighter, the armed freighter that I showed off just before this, has beaten this thing, albeit barely. And it's just because the AA mounts shot the cannons off and then started putting holes in the hull because it's just wood. Other than that, though, that'll be the last design for today. I will see y'all in the next one when we go over Garrison Fleet designs.